Shuklambaradharam Vishnum Sasivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vignopashantaye. Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vanjananandanam Veeram Janaki Shokanashanam Kapishamakshaham Vande Lanka Bhayankaram. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Govindaya Namo Namaha. Namaskaram. Welcome to the 43rd session of Narayaneeyam, a sequel to Mohini Avatara detailed by Bhattadiri in Dasakam 29. By way of a quick recap for those who may have missed some or all of the three Dasakams before, here is a very brief summary. In the last three Dasakams, 27, 28, 29, we saw an abridged account of Amrita Manthana highlighting some of the many challenges faced by the Devas and Asuras, and Bhagavan's incarnation as Kurma, the giant tortoise, helping to stabilize the crushing Mandara mountain, which was used as the churning rod, and also the emergence of rare gifts and extraordinary creatures from the churned ocean. Lord Parameshwara protecting the cosmic creation by absorbing the Kalakuta or Halahala, becoming the Nilakanta. Goddess Mahalakshmi emerging from the ocean and marrying Lord Vishnu. And towards the end of Dasakam 28, Bhattadiri just mentioned the incarnation of Dhanvantari. In the last session, that is the 42nd session highlighting Dasakam 29, many of the questions from devotees on the avatar of Dhanvantari and the popular understanding or lack thereof were clarified as they were obtaining in epic and Puranic lores and available references. That session also highlighted the entire Dasakam 29, through which we saw many events. The Asuras snatching away of the Amrita Kalasam, or the pot of nectar from Dhanvantari. We saw the stirring up of a major feud among Devas and Asuras by the delusive action of Lords Māyā, apparently lopsided distribution of nectar to the Devas, and the ensuing great war between the Devas and the Asuras. That is when the Lord appeared among the Asuras, assuming the form of a bewitching damsel Mohini, or charming temptress. Enticed by the rare beauty of your new form, Bhagavane, the Asuras abandoned their quarrel over the pot of ambrosia. Mohini served the Devas the entire pot, if not most of the nectar that protects against Jara, that is old age, and Marana, the death. When Mohini was serving nectar to all the Devas in the special row, Swarbhanu, a Dhanava, sneakily sat in the row of Devas between Surya, the sun, and Chandra, the moon, who then pointed out to Swarbhanu's real identity to Mohini. The Lord then took his real form and cut off Swarbhanu's head using the Sudarshana Chakra. The head and trunk of Swarbhanu got severed from one another. As the life-giving nectar had already reached the throat, Swarbhanu was still alive. The head portion, which came to be known as Rahu, and the trunk portion Ketu, although Bhagavatam does not say anything about the trunk portion except that it fell down, Rahu and Ketu were both endowed with life, owing to the power of Amritam that already went into the body, and each one was given the status of a deity presiding over a planet of the same name, Rahu and Ketu, respectively. In ancient astrology, these two attained the stature of the planets, and modern astrologers who follow Hindu style of astronomy and astrology place them as shadow planets and thus within the Navagrahams, bestowing them great powers. Bhagavatam concludes the Amrita Manthana and subsequent events, including the incarnation of Mohini, an incredible attraction that Bhagavan Shiva was subjected to at the moment. Sri Sukabrahmam concludes chapter 12 of Canto 8 with the slogan, Asatta Vishayam Angrim Bhavagamyam Prabandaya Asada Vishayam Angrim Bhavagamyam Prabanna Amritam Amaravaryan Asayat Sindhu Madhyam Asada Vishayam Angrim Bhavagamyam Prabanna Amritam Amaravaryan Asayat Sindhu Madhyam Kapata Yuvati Vesha Mokayan Yasurarim Tamagam Upasritanam Kamapuram Natosmi Kapata Yuvati Vesha Mokayan Yasurarim Tamagam Upasritanam Kamapuram Natosmi. Asat Avishayam Angrim Bhavagamyam Prapannat Amritam Amaravaryan Asayat Sindhu Matyam Kapata Yuvati Vesho Mohayan Yasuraris Tamaham Upasritanam Kamapuram Natosmi. The entire chapter 12 with the 47 slokams is resolute by Sukha to describe the extraordinary Maya of Bhagavan, incarnating into the most exquisite and blemishless feminine beauty as Mohini Murti. This must have prompted Bhattadri to use most of the Dasakam 29 for Mohini. Upon seeing Mohini's form, even Lord Shiva, who burnt Kama, was agitated and captivated. Later, by the grace of the Supreme Brahman, Shiva controlled himself totally. This demonstrates the power of the Almighty's inexplicable energy and how everyone is captivated by the very form of woman in this material world of creation. It is declared in this connection that only a pure devotee can surpass and overcome himself from the attractive pulls of Maya. Otherwise, once a living entity is trapped by the external feature of Maya, that entity cannot overcome it. After Mahadeva was graced by the Vaikunthavasi, he praised, worshipped the Lord Supreme along with his wife Bhavani and left for his own abode in Kailasa. Sukabrahmam uses Lord Shiva to express this sentiment very powerfully in the same chapter 12, a few slokams before the conclusion. Ahivyapasyatatvam majasya maya Ahivyapasyatatvam majasya maya Parasya pumsaha paradevataya Parasya pumsaha paradevataya Parasya pumsaha maya Parasya pumsaha paradevataya Aham kalam rushabho vimukhye Yayavashonye kimuta swatantra Yayavashonye kimuta swatantra Ayi vyapasyaha tattvamajasya mayam parasya pumsaha paradevatayah aham kalanam rushabhopi mukhye yaya vashonye kimutasva tantra. Parameshwaran Vishnuvai valam vandu vanangi சென்ற தக்ஷணமே ரிஷிகளின் முன்னிலையில் கைலாயத்தில் பவானியிடம் சொல்லுகிறார். ஓ உலக நாயகியே, பிறப்பற்றவனும் பரதெய்வமுமாகிய பரமபுருஷனுடைய மாயையை பார்த்தாயா பவானி? சகல சித்திகளும் வல்லவன் என்று அனைவராலும் வணங்கப்படும் அடியேனே அந்த பகவான் மாயையால் என்னையும் அறியாமல் ஒரு கணம் மயங்கி விட்டேன் அல்லவா? புலன்களுக்கு கட்டுப்பட்ட மற்றோரை பற்றி நான் சொல்ல வேண்டுமா? தேவசத்ருக்களை கபடமான ஸ்ரீ வேஷத்தால் எவர் மயக்கினாரோ, எவர் தம்மை அணுகியவர்க்கு அவரது ஆசைகளை எல்லாம் பூர்த்தி செய்விப்பவரோ, அத்தகைய பெருந்தகையை சிரம் தாழ்த்தி வணங்குகிறேன். In the past, I have been asked questions as to whether and where Srimad Bhagavatam mentions the birth of Harihara or Ayyappa or Manikanta to Mohini and Shambhu. There is no mention of a child born to Mohini or about a Shastha or Harihara-Sutta in Srimad Bhagavatam, since the chapter concludes with the 47th sloka as I mentioned earlier. Since this is an important watershed that may raise several questions, let us look elsewhere for Harihara-Sutta or Shastha Mahatmyam, and where or what were the earliest authentic references in scriptures that gave rise to the concept of Harihara-Putra or Shastha. Due to lack of curiosity and incapacity to search and research, there are controversies on subjects such as, is Ayyappan the same as Dharmasastha or Shastha? Is the available hagiography on Shastha a mere hyperbole? Are most of the internet and book versions assigning a date closer to 900 Common Era for the birth of Dharmasastha or Ayyappan credible enough or backed by Puranic references? What is Ayyappa's Vahana or vehicle? Is it a tiger, white tiger, or an elephant? And the questions are numerous, and most of the questioning public do not appear to be truth seekers really, but quite often deriding atheists who question every available Puranic anecdote or about any Purana in Sanatana Dharma scriptures about gods and goddesses. If we ignore those, but only focus on the questions raised by the curious believers, we will have answers. The basis comes from later year Mahapurānās, which include Skanda Purana, Brahma Purana, and Brahmanda Purānās, and even Vishnu Purana in a couple of places. They all contain references of Shastha, Harihara-Putra, or Mahāsãstha, who is referred to in later year literatures dating back to the last 800 years, mostly in southern parts of India, as Harihara-Sutan, Ayyappan, Ayyan Ayyappan, Ayya the Lord and Appan the Father, and Manikanta or Manikandan in local dialect. I have faced hagiographical, historical, and mythological questions many a times in the recent past, arising out of many Puranic references. For almost 40 years of my pursuit of life as an Upanyasaka, or attempting to clarify with authenticity all the subjects in my lectures. One such profound question is, how are the dates assigned to Sanskrit scriptures, especially our Purānās, which give us an ocean of anecdotes? Are they only 600 years earlier or 800 years earlier, as many of the Western scholars or curious book writers have written? Or are they time-tested, very old, relating to Veda-Vyasa's time? Scholars date the Purānās using a variety of methods, primarily relying on internal evidence, which would mean content analysis, linguistic style, historical, astronomical references, and external evidence, which are archaeological finds, mentions in other securely dated texts, manuscript analysis, etc. So as I said, there are two sources, internal evidence and external evidence. It is a complex process because Puranic texts were composed orally over centuries before being written down and have been continuously edited and augmented over centuries. Fixing of the dates of the Mahapuranams has always been controversial. The mythical belief is that at least the 18 Mahapuranams were written by Vedavyasa before the end of Dwapara Yuga, and that settles the dates backwards to more than 5,600 years behind today. This is based on corroborated information, agreed amid scholars and historians, that year 2025 is the 5,126th or 5,127th year of Kali Yuga. The Hindu Kali Yuga is traditionally considered to have begun in 3001 BCE or before Common Era, and would last for a total of 432,000 years from the advent of Kali. Brahma Purana is the oldest. Matsya, Vayu, Markandeya, Shiva, and Skanda Puranas are considered older Puranas of the 18 Mahapuranas. While the scholars have found selective references to Harihara-Sutta or Sãstha or Mahãsãstha and Brahmanda, the one that they often cite is Shankara Samhita of Skanda Purana as the most authentic source. This Purana is the largest of Mahapuranas, and the available work contains 81,000 slokams in 7 cantos, and luckily we have the 1898 printed version retrieved from palm leaves from the Library of Nepal. Recently, these were digitized into 20 digital books. The voluminous Purana covers a wide range of innumerable topics, including mythology, philosophy, ethics and rituals, gods and goddesses, temples and shrines, an encyclopedia of information dating back to thousands of years. It is not just on Skanda alone. In Asura Kanda of Skanda Purana, 13th chapter, we find the origin and confirmation of the incarnation of Harihara-Sutta. For want of time, I'll quote only a few slokams most pertinent to highlight the veracity. Evam tayo sujatatvad shastra vichata bhavat Hare-Harasyapi tata putratvam iti bhavitam gatvayam tu mahadevam kim krityam mama bhopitaha evam uktva manamrasya bhuvaneshwaratam dadau satu sātta kumaroyam shambhotvam avirakshatu ityuktva tadendroyam sasmara jagatam prabhum sāttaram ekachittena chaccha puratayeva saha tadanīmāvirāsiddhi sāstha kim karavanyaham iti bruvān ganaukena krūrena parito vrutaha sātta tvayatra samrakshaya sachime pranavallava pranavallava. Evam tayoho sujatatvad shāstha apicha tatha bhavat harehe harasyapi tatha putratvam iti bhavitam. Because of this holy union between Hara and Hari, the offspring born to Mohini became the son of Hari and Hara and became known as Sãstha. Gatvayam tu mahadevam kim krityam mama boho pitaha evam uktva vanamrasya bhuvaneshwaratam dadav. The son went to Mahadeva, prostrated and humbly sought instructions. O venerable father, what am I expected to do? Father said, my dear son, be the Lord of the worlds. Be the Bhuvaneshwara. So ordained Lord Shambhu. Bhuvaneshwaratam dadav. Satu sāstha kumaroyam shambhoho tvam abhirakshatu ityuktva tadendroyam sasmara jagatam prabhum. Mahadeva turned to Indra, who came to prostrate to him, and said, let Sãstha protect you all. Sāstaram ekachittena chaccha puratayeva saha tadanīmā virāsiddhi Sãstha kim karavanyaham. And therefore, Indra did unwavering meditation on and benediction to Sãstha. Iti Bruvan Ganaugena Krurena Parito Brutaha Shasta Yatra Samrakshya Sachime Pranavallava. Hearing that, Shasta, surrounded by his Ganas, appeared in front of Indrani and Indra and asked them, "What do you want from me?" Gantavyoyam Māyā Sãstha Kailasakyo Mahidaraha Mad Agamana Paryantam Yuttiktvatam Tadantike Niveshayatva Anumatastaya Tenapi Vritraha Putraste Devataihi Sardam Kailasam Pratishigrataha. Indra submitted that Shasta should protect Indrani until he returns from Mount Kailasa, where he is going to be proceeding to surrender unto Mahadeva. With the permission from Shasta and Indrani, Lord Indra proceeded to Kailasam. Equally heartening is the fact that the birth and Leela of Shasta were enjoyed by Sri Adishankara Bhagavatpada, Appar Peruman, Appaya Dikshidhar, and of course his son Nilakanta Dikshidhar, and many other modern day Acharyas. We will see some of them before we proceed to Dasakam 30 of Narayaneeyam. It is not only fitting but so fortuitous that the Mandala Vratam observance and the start of the Ayyappan pilgrimage season began this morning, namely the November 16th, 2025. As you may be aware, the season runs for 41 days, culminating in the Makara Vilakku festival on January 14, 2026. The term Shasta is originally from Sanskrit, often denoting a revered teacher, spiritual guide, supreme ruler, and the Lord God. In fact, there are 8 Shastras or Ashta Shastra quoted in an Agama Shastra book known as Dhyana Ratnavali. Adi Mahāsãstha, Dharma Shastra or Ayyappan, Jnana Shastra, Kalyana Varada Shastra, Sammohana Shastra, Santana Prapti Shastra, Veda Shastra, and Veera Shastra. Ardent and strict followers of Ayyappa Sampradayam discount the rest of Shastras and accept only Dharma Shastra as their Ayyanappan or Ayyappan. Brahmasri is used to denote Kartikeya or Skanda or Subramanya Swami by many scholars and Acharya who follow the Mahãsãstha tradition of Ayyappan. There are archaeological and library references attesting Ayyanar Chattan from the 3rd century Common Era and literary references to that name and form found in Silapadikaram dating back to the 4th century of Common Era. Ayyanappa Chattan. We talked about Ayyanar Chattan. There is also Ayyanappa Chattan, referred in those works and the deities in sitting pose identified with Ayyanappan or Ayyappan or Chattan or Shastan and Shasta. They all point to the same. Since the early Chola period, Ayyanar, Ayyappan, Ayyanappan, and Chattan have become the village protector deities or Yellai Kaval Deivangal, the warrior kings protecting the villages and towns in place of the Rajas who were ruling the larger kingdom. Appar Peruman is also known as Thirunavukarasar. He says in Thiruvaiyaru Tirumurai Padigam, Ayyaranarku Tirumalai Tavira Ver Devi Illai, என்கிறார் அப்பர் பெருமான். எரியலால் உருவமில்லை, ஏறலால் ஏறலில்லை, எரியலால் உருவமில்லை, ஏறலால் ஏறலில்லை, கரியலால் போர்வையில்லை, காண்டகு சோதியார்க்கு கரியலால் போர்வையில்லை, காண்டகு சோதியார்க்கு பிரிவிலா அமரர் கூடி, பிரிவிலா அமரர் கூடி பெருந்தகை பிரான் என்றோ அறியலார் தேவி இல்லை, ஐயன் ஐயாரனார்கே அறியலார் தேவி இல்லை, ஐயன் ஐயாரனார்கே. எரியலால் உருவம் இல்லை, ஏறலால் ஏறல் இல்லை, கரியலால் போர்வை இல்லை, காண்தகு சோதியார்க்கு பிரிவிலா அமரர் கூடி பெருந்தகை பிரான் என்று எத்தும் அரியலால் தேவி இல்லை, ஐயன் ஐயாரனார்க்கே. எரியலார் உருவம் இல்லை, எனது ஐயன் ஐயாரனார்க்கு நெருப்புருவம் தவிர வேற்று உருவம் இல்லை. He only appears as Agni or as the light or the intense heat and light. எரியலார் உருவம் இல்லை, ஏறலால் ஏறல் இல்லை. காளையை தவிர வேற்று வாகனங்களில் அவர் ஏறுவதில்லை. கரியலால் போர்வை இல்லை, யானை தோலை தவிர வேறு போர்வை உடுத்திக் கொள்வதில்லை. காண்தகு சோதியார்க்கு காணுவதற்கு ஏற்ற ஞான பிரகாசமுடைய அப்பெருமானுக்கு பிரிவிலா அமரர் கூடி பெருந்தகை பிரான் என்று ஏத்தும். பிரியாது தேவர்கள் அனைவரும் கூடி மேம்பட்ட சிறப்பனை உடைய பெருமான் என்று துதிக்கும் திருமாலை தவிர வேறு தேவி இல்லை. எப்படி முடிக்கிறார்? பிரிவிலா அமரர் கூடி பெருந்தகை பிரான் என்று ஏத்தும் அரியலால் தேவி இல்லை ஐயன் ஐயாரனார்க்கே. அப்படிப்பட்ட பெருமானை துதிப்பவர்கள் திருமாலை தவிர வேறு தேவியை தேவியாக ஏற்றுக்கொள்ளவில்லை என்று அப்பர் பெருமான் பெருமையாக மோகினியுடன் கூடிய மகாதேவனை பற்றி புகழ்கிறார். இங்கு இறைவனுடைய திருப்பெயர் ஐயாற்றீசர், ஐயாரப்பர், பஞ்சநதீஸ்வரர். That is, the ஸ்தலம் is திருவையாறு, ஐயாரப்பர் or பஞ்சநதீஸ்வரர். இறைவியார் திருப்பெயர் அறம் வளர்த்த நாயகி அல்லது தர்ம சம்பர்த்தனி. திருமுறை 4ஆம் திருமுறை 40வது திருப்பதிகம் அருளி செய்தவர் திருநாவுக்கரசு சுவாமிகள், அப்பர் சுவாமிகள் என்று பெயர் பெற்றவர். இது திருவையாறு தலத்தை பற்றிய பாடல். ஆழ்வார்களோ நாயன்மார்களோ ஐயப்பனை பற்றி எந்த ஒரு தகவலும் பாசுரங்களிலோ பதிகங்களிலோ நேரடியாகவோ மறைமுகமாகவோ ஹரிஹர சுதன் என்றோ ஐயப்பன் என்றோ ஐயனப்பன் என்றோ பாடியதாக தெரியவில்லை. Lord Ayyappan of Sabarimala in Kerala is worshipped by Hindus, more so in southern provinces, as a divine incarnation with an exemplary, if not unique, character. He is believed to be the Harihara-Putra, born of Mohini. He is also worshipped as an incarnation of Lord Buddha. According to the popular beliefs, Shastha transformed himself into a baby who was found by the king of Pandala in Kerala Desam. The king was at the time childless. Ayyappan was then adopted as his heir. After a brief time, Pandala's queen had her own son, after which she tried to get rid of Ayyappan. She pretended that she was seriously ill and said only a rare white tiger's milk could cure her. Showing total deference to the mother, though adopted, the young Ayyappan went off to the forest and returned riding a white tigress. In another version, in his search for tiger's milk, Ayyappan was ordained to go to heaven by Lord Shiva to kill the demoness Mahishi. Ayyappan successfully ejected Mahishi from heaven and threw her to the Mother Earth. The demoness asked him to take her as his wife, but Ayyappan, being the lord of celibacy or Brahmacharya, refused any such proposal. However, in the recent years, for some reasons, Mahishi has been given a prominent place at the Ayyappan shrine. More than 100 million Hindus in India and abroad are believed to be ardent followers of Ayyappan, the Lord of Sabarimala, and it is believed that, as stated by Indian mainstream media, that at least 10 to 15 million devotees visit Sabarimala shrine annually, and about half of such pilgrims in the winter months alone. Dressed in black, in simple attire, dumping all vanity, the pilgrims carry on their heads basic survival kits, discard consumption of any liquor or any intoxicant, eat subsistence vegetarian food only, constantly help one another during the entire pilgrimage, which most of the devotees take by foot, and observe a strict vows of celibacy for the duration of the entire celebration, preparing for the pilgrimage by singing praises to Ayyappan, and then head off on the long trek by foot, often lasting 48 days to reach the shrine. All castes and creeds are allowed to enter the Shastha shrine. But strangely, women in their fertile years were not permitted to enter the shrine, starting from the year 1991 through 2018. A constitutional ruling was issued by the Supreme Court of India in 2018, after which the entry of women of all ages is now unrestricted and the flow started since 2019. I wish I could do a lot more on Shastra in greater detail, but this session is limited in time and hence I have to stop here with just an overview. Someday later, we can go closer to the available data and ponder more on this aspect, which is at once awe-inspiring. Let us see a couple of poems and important anecdotes which are very interesting for the believers and devotees. Banatum Vrishabatum Attavapusha Banatum Vrishabatum Attavapusha Bharyatum Aryapate Gonitvam Sakita Mridangavagata Chetyadi Rupam Dado Gonitvam Sakita Mridangavagata Chetyadi Rupam Dado Vatpade Nayanarpanam Chakritavan Tvadeha Bhago Hari Puja Taraha Sayevagina Chet Ova Tadanyo Digaha Ova Tadanyo Adhigaha. Adi Bhagavad Pada in Shivananda Lahari says, Bhanatvam Rishabhatvam Ardhavapusha Bharyatvam Aryapate Gonitvam Sakita Mridanga Vahata Chetyadi Rupam Dadau Tat Pade Nayanarpanam Chakritavan Tat Deha Bhago Harihi Pujyat Pujyataraha Sayevahi Nachet Kova Tadanyo Adhikaha. This is 82nd slokam of Shivananda Lahari. O Lord of Arya, the Lord Vishnu became your arrow and a bull, occupied one half of your body, became transformed to be your wife, became a boar to search for you, became your lady friend to serve the nectar, became the player of drum while you dance, and offered his eye in worship at your feet. He also took off the share of your body as Harihara, and so he becomes eminently suitable for worship. For who else is there greater than him? This was Adi Shankara. The beauty of this slokam can be explained probably a lot more in Tamil. Bhanatvam Vrishabhatvam. Mahavishnu ஆனவர் திரிபுர சம்ஹாரத்தின் போது பானத்தன்மை அடைந்தவர். உன் வாகனமான போது விஷபத்தன்மை. அர்த்த வபுஷா பாரியாத்துவம் ஆரியாபதே. உனது பாதி உடலை கொண்ட போது மனைவித்தன்மை. கோணித்துவம் சகிதா மிருதங்க வகதா சேத்தியாதி ரூபம் ததோ. உன் அடி தேடி அலைந்த போது பன்றித்தன்மை. மோகினியாக வந்தபோது தோழித்தன்மை. நடராஜ தாண்டவத்தில் உனக்கு மிருதங்கம் வாசிப்பவனது தன்மை. இத்தகைய பல வடிவங்களை தாங்கினார் அல்லவா. உன்னை அர்ச்சிக்கையில் ஒரு தாமரை பூ குறைய உனது பாதத்தில் கமலநேயனான அந்த மகாவிஷ்ணு தனது கண்ணையும் அர்ப்பித்தார் அல்லவா. சங்கர நாராயணர் தோற்றத்தில் உனது உடலில் பாதி பங்கு கொண்டவர் அல்லவா இவர். இக்காரணங்களை கொண்டே அந்த மகாவிஷ்ணு பூஜ்யர்களிலும் மகா பூஜ்யர் என்ற ஸ்தானம் கொண்டவர். அனைவரிலும் மிக்க பூஜிக்கத்தக்கவராகிறார். அங்கனம் இல்லாவிடில் அவரிலும் மேலானவர் எவரேனும் உளரோ என்கிறார் ஆதிசங்கர பகவத் பாதர். Some may wonder what is this unique reference by Adishankara Bhagavad Pada about Lord Shiva accepting the offer of Mahavishnu, the benediction and also a missing flower replaced by the very eye of Mahavishnu. According to the Linga Purāna, it was Lord Shiva who gifted the Sudarshana Chakra to Lord Vishnu. When Lord Vishnu was fighting the Asuras and battled them for eons, finally Vishnu decided to seek the help of Mahadeva and thus meditated on Lord Mahadeva. So, in order to do the benediction, Vishnu gathered 1000 lotus flowers to do the benediction. However, when he realized that he was short of one flower, he pulled out one of his own eyes to complete the 1000 because he was known as Kamala Nayana, which means the one who has lotus-like eyes. Pleased with this very gesture, Lord Shiva gifted the Sudarshana Chakra to Lord Vishnu to vanquish the Asuras. This is as per the Linga Purana. The myth of Vishnu receiving Sudarshana Chakra from Shiva is also related in the 41st chapter of the Saura Purana, Rudra Samhita, Yuddha Kanda in the Shiva Purana. Second canto, 5th chapter, 23rd sloka. Let us now enjoy another great anecdote about Harihara-Putra and Venerable Appaya Dikshita. I have mentioned a few times over the years in my Upanyasams about the greatness of one of the greatest of Vedantins, an acclaimed Advaitic scholar of the 16th century. He sought the help of the Lord Shastha, or Ayyappan himself, to resolve a theological quandary amidst the factions of believers. Also, although the venerated Advaitin Appaya Dikshita did write the work titled Vairagya Satakam, this text is often confused with the more famous work of the same name by the great Bhartrhari, who lived between 570 and 651 Common Era, was a great linguist, a theologist, and philosopher known for Vairagya Satakam. The collection of more than 100 works published under the title of Kavyamala and attributed to Appaya Dikshita includes this Vairagya Satakam, which is now branded as Vairagya Satakam 2. The veracity of this work attributed to Appaya Dikshita was confirmed by Kaanchi Paramacharya Chandrasekharendra Saraswati. It is said that only 60 of them are well known today. In other words, only 60 of the literary works of Appaya Dikshita, found originally under the title of Kavyamala, are prevalent amongst the scholars and those in spiritual pursuit. The actual Satakam, however, does not contain the verse which I just quoted, but an authentic book on Appaya Dikshita written by Dr. N. Rameshan, published in 1972 and blessed by His Holiness Kaanchi Paramacharya, mentions this poem as part of Appaya Dikshita's work in a historically corroborated context. The legend quoted and the circumstances behind this incredible verse are exquisite, and hence the reference here. A little bit of background may be of help to some of you who may be unfamiliar with the historical context of the times when Appaya Dikshita lived. The real missions of Dikshita's life were the reconciliation of creeds, cults, and philosophies. Dikshita was a peacemaker who pleaded for harmony, tolerance, and mutual goodwill and understanding between arguing factions of Sanatana Dharma followers. Appaya Dikshita was born in a hot age of bigotry and vigorous proselytism. The fight was all about who was or who is the supreme God and the method for mokshama salvation. In actual life, nevertheless, irrespective of Vedanta, the warring sects were unified by an unquestioned allegiance to the Shruti and the Smriti. I had defined Shruti and Smriti in an earlier session. The sectarian disputes did not stop with the growth of polemical literature in those 1,000 years of fights. Persecution of one sect by another with political backing was not of rare occurrence. The lives of the great leaders of either of Shaivism or so-called Vaishnavism during the 10th centuries from the 6th to the 16th century afford ample evidences of stormy times when either of the creeds had to endure great hardships from the fury of the rival factions, which for perchance got the upper hand as the oppressor. So it was a swing. Sometimes Shaivites were dominant, sometimes Vaishnavites were dominant. Though the greatest saints did not discriminate between Shiva and Vishnu and declared them to be two sides of the same coin, the adherents of the creeds were mostly cantankerous and harbored acrimony for devotion. Waves of conversions rose and fell. It was a mistaken Vaishnavism that was accused of proselytizing tendencies, being impatient for universal expansion. I had also explained about who is a Vaishnava and what is the so-called Vaishnavism in a recent session. South India was seized with one such fervor when Ramaraya was the regent of Sadasiva, the then nominal ruler of the Vijayanagara Empire. Ramaraya was completely under the influence of one Sri Tatacharya, the Rajaguru of the kingdom. During Ramaraya's times and during the times of the inheritors of the fragment of the declining Vijayanagara Empire after the Battle of Talikota, which reduced the greatness of Vijayanagara to a small kingdom, mass conversions took place, engineered by the then Rajagurus under state patronage or by royal commands. Sri Appaya Dikshita, in his Nigrahashtakam, says that the leader of the Vaishnavas had taken a resolute vow to stamp out Shaivism from the land. The Prapannamritam, a work of one Anantacharya, which purports to record the history of Vaishnavism and the lives of the Acharyas, refers to Sri Appaya Dikshita as living then in Chidambaram, resplendent with fame and unassailable by controversialist, sectarian, or philosophical. He further states that to condemn Dikshita's great works on Shiva and Advaita, Tatacharya wrote a book known as Panchamata Bhanjanam in defense of the believers and followers of Sri Ramanuja, although regrettably the religion of Ramanuja was one of love and surrender to the Supreme. Sharanagati was the theme, which prompted Ramanuja to climb the temple tower to pronounce a secretive Ashtakshara Mahamantra to masses, despite the very life threat of his guru that such an act that Ramanuja was attempting would break his head to 1,000 fragments. For context, sadly, Sri Tatacharya descended from such illustrious lineage and Acharyas of Sri Vaishnava philosophy such as Nathamuni, Sri Ramanuja, and Tirumalai Nambi. Tatacharya's brother Sundara Desika and Tatacharya himself served as the royal preceptors of the Vijayanagara emperors. This context is very important and that's why I had to go elaborate. Our anecdote is about a unique temple in Vijayanagara Empire with Shastha as the principal deity. It was widespread belief amongst the residents and devotees of Shastha that he is the son of Mohini, an incarnation of Bhagavan Vishnu. Shastha idol in the sanctum in deep, squatting, meditative posture known as Yoga Pattasana had his right index finger placed over the nose, giving the impression that the image was in deep thought or contemplation. The king who happened to come there asked the local residents as to the reason for this unique posture of the idol. And an old man in the village said, there was an ancient legend or time immemorial belief a great person would be visiting the village temple who would then give the correct reason why Shastha was sitting in Yoga Pattasana posture with the finger over the nose, and that if the reason was the right one, Lord Shastha would remove the finger or show visible appreciation for the answer received. Incidentally, for those who may be curious, Yoga Pattasana is explained in verse 121 of the 19th century Sanskrit treatise known as Sri Tattvanidhi, describing 80 primary asanas or postures and many other auxiliary ones. This pose of Yoga Pattasana is said to symbolize Shasta's vow as a celibate ascetic or as a Naishtika Brahmachari. Unlike other Hindu deities with a consort, who generally leave a lap free for their consort, Ayyappa's legs are bound together and placed on his feet, reflecting a mood other than comfortable enjoyment or a worldly life. This Yoga Pattasana posture signifies Ayyappa's detachment from worldly desires, representing a state of constant awareness, meditation, and control over the mind. The king then turned to Tatacharya and asked him to give the reason for Ayyappa's pose and apparent mood. Remember, That was the time when the king visited with Tatacharya on one side and Apaya Dikshit on the other side. First question was given to Rajaguru. Then Tatacharya responded in the following words, Vishnu Sutoham Vidhina Samoham Danyattadoham Surasevitoham Tatapi Bhutecha Sutogametaihi Bhutaivritaha Chintayati Shasta Chintayati Shasta Sutogametaihi Bhutaivritaha Chintayati Shasta. That Shasta was in a meditating mood because he was depressed that he was always surrounded by Bhutaganas of his father Lord Shiva, even though all the Devas also used to venerate Shasta in view of his position as the son of Lord Vishnu. This was a tongue-in-cheek, arrogant answer by Tatacharya. Vishnoho sutoham vidina samoham dhanyastatoham surasevitoham tatapi bhutesha sutohametaihi bhutaihi vritaha chintayatiha shasta. This is how Tatacharya explained his reason for the nose and the finger. With the explanation given by Tatacharya, Shasta did not lift his finger and the idol was exactly the same it was, nor showed any movement. Then it is now the turn. Then king looked at Sri Apaya Dikshita and then Sri Apaya Dikshita sang spontaneously the following poem as a question to Shasta. Ambeti Gauri Bhagvayami Patnyah Piturmata Yeva Sarvaga Ambeti Gauri Bhagvayami Patnyah Piturmata Yeva Sarvaga Katam tu Lakshmi Nidhi Chintayodam Shastaramide Sakala Sankaram Ide Sakalartha Siddhi. Ambeti Gaurim Ahvayami Patnyaha Piturmata Eva Sarvaha Katantu Lakshmi Miti Chintayantam Shastaramide Sakalartha Siddhyai. Beautiful verse. I could easily call Goddess Gauri as my mother, since all the wives of my father Mahadeva are mothers to me. I don't mind calling Gauri as my mother, because it is my father Mahadeva's wife. But I am at a loss as to how to address Goddess Lakshmi, who happens to be the wife of my mother. Katantu Lakshmi imiti chintayantam. As the anecdote goes, the temple idols of Shasta not only raised his index finger to his forehead, from the nose to the forehead, but moved a bit, indicating apparent perplexity. This was a divine sign acknowledging the complexity of the philosophical question posed by Apaya Dikshit. Shastara Mede Sakalartha Siddhi. I bow to Shasta for the fulfillment of all my desires. Was he seeking anything particular? This appeal transcends sectarian debate and recognizes the syncretic nature of Shasta, who represents the unity of Shiva and Vishnu. The term Sakalartha Siddhyai is a compound of three Sanskrit words. Sakala meaning, as you know, all or complete. Artha meaning purpose, can be desire or material possession. Siddhi means fulfillment, accomplishment or perfection. Therefore, Sakalartha Siddhi can be translated either as for the fulfillment of all desires or for the accomplishment of all the purposes. So in this context, Apaya Dikshit is not asking for anything material, but for the resolution of spiritual and philosophical dilemma with Shasta's help. Shastra needs several levels of appreciation, but the slight digression from mainstay Narayaneeyam can afford only an hour of session this time. Kindly forgive me for that. Let us listen to two songs before we conclude this session. The first is Harihara-Putram, a benediction or kirtanam in Raga Vasanta, attributed to Muthuswami Dikshidhar, although some musicians started the controversy of which songs were and which were not the original and authentic. And since this song was not found in the book of Dikshidhar's compositions by his grandson Subbarama Dikshidhar, you know the book, Sangeeta Sampradaya Pradarshini. While this squabble has been going on for more than 25 years, this song was also popularized by great stalwarts in Karnataka Sangeeta tradition, such as Sarvashri M.D. Ramanathan, D.K. Pattammal, Yamma Subbalakshmi, Palgad K.V. Narayanaswamy, G.N. Balasubramaniam, Semangudi Srinivasa Iyer, and 100 others. This song has gained stronghold in modern stage of performers despite all the squabbles of authenticity. Pandya Kerala Adi Desha Prabhakaram. This phrase signifies a blend of Pandya and Kerala Desam. Why did it become important here? Most of you may be aware that Ayyappa's foster father was the king of Pandala, a small kingdom in Malayala Desam, that is today's Kerala, and that he descended from a branch of the Pandya kings who ruled Madurai. So there is a lineage. The Pandala Raja's lineage is from Pandya on one side and ruling in Kerala on the other side. So it had a blend of both. The concluding song is Harivarasanam, became extremely popular all over India when it was included in the famous Malayalam film Swami Ayyappan in 1975. The background or authorship has some controversy again amongst aficionados. The earlier singers of Harivarasanam were the bhajan singers of Kalladakuruchi temple and later Purakattu or Purakkadu Anandeswaram Shiva temple. Devotees known as Kalladakootam, people from Kalladakuruchi, sang this song everywhere in Kerala and it became popular throughout the state by late 1960s. The exact origin of the song is unclear. The earliest one of the claims mentions Kambangudi Kulattu Ayyar as the composer who authored a collection of devotional songs named Harivarasanam Vishwamohanam, which included this song. The later claims the composer as Kondahattu Janaki Amma, which goes on to mention that she composed the Kirtanam as an offering to Lord Ayyappa and she had submitted the work to her father, Anantakrishna Iyer, who was then Sabarimala Melshanti or the chief priest, had claimed that the family possessed original handwritten notes of the author to prove the authorship. All these records mention Srinivasa Iyer as the Sambandhakan or the compiler. The reason behind this is believed that back then people would not sign their name when submitting a creative work as a mark of humility and as an offering at the temple. It is believed that Swami Vimochanananda was the first to recite the Kirtanam at Sabarimala in the early 1950s as Urakupatu or Lallavi. He is the same Swamiji who installed an idol in Kashi Ayyappan temple. The practice has been to recite it at the end of the day's rituals, to do Mancha Seva to Lord Ayyappa, to sleep, and the Shobhana Sangeetam tradition has continued since then. Let us now listen to the special rendition for this episode by Sri T.S. Ranganathan, popularly known as Giri Ranganathan, a trained musician, well-known entrepreneur in India, US and other centers, popularizing Sanatana Dharma through thousands of books, publications, and through his music with hundreds of audio-video recordings, all offered free globally for 35 years now. Let us listen to the song now.
Harivarasanam Vishwamohanam Harihadishwaram Aradhya Padukam Harivimardanam Nityanartanam Hariharatmajam Devamashraye Sharanakirtanam Shaktamanasam Haranalolupam Nartanalasam Arunabhasuram Bhudanayakam Hariharatmajam Devamashraye Pranaya Satyakam Prananayakam Pranatakalpakam Suprabhanjitam Pranavamandiram Kirtanapriyam Hariharatmajam Devamashraye Turagavahanam Sundarananam Varagadayudham Vedavarnitam Guru Kripakaram Kirtanapriyam Hariharatmajam Devamashraye Tribhuvanarchitam Devatatmakam Trinaya नयनप्रभुं दिव्यदेशिकं त्रिदशपूजितं चिन्तितप्रदं हरिहरात्मजं देवमाश्रये भवभयापहं भावुकावहं भुवनमोहनं भूतिभूषणं धवलवाहनं दिव्यवारणं हरिहरात्मजं देवमाश्रये कलमृदुस्मितं सुन्दराननं कलभकोमलं गात्रमोहनं कलभकेसरी वाजिवाहनं हरिहरात्मजं देवमाश्रये श्रितजनप्रियं चिन्तितप्रदं श्रुतिविभूषणं साधुजीवनं श्रुतिमनोहरं गीतलालसं हरिहरात्मजं देवमाश्रये शरणमय्यप्पा स्वामी शरणमय्यप्पा शरणमय्यप्पा स्वामी शरणमय्यप्पा शरणमय्यप्पा स्वामी शरणमय्यप्पा शरणमय्यप्पा स्वामी शरणमय्यप्पा स्वामी शरणमय्यप्पा स्वामी शरणमय्यप्पा स्वामी शरणमय्यप्पा
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते नारायणाय। नारायण 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 हरे कृष्णा गुरुवायूरप्पा।